It's time for the Ward Scott Files, hosted by John Martin. Join the Salty Dog and his captain, Ted Yoho. Search for the Ward Scott Files on Facebook, Vimeo, and over 30 audio platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Now here's your host, the Salty Dog, John Martin.
Well, top of the morning to you.
Same to you there, Big John.
Happy St. Patty's Day, man.
It is that. I see you're in green and
I got
am
my
not.
green on. I was supposed to pinch you, right? Without green, man. You know, there we go.
I don't know if you can do that anymore.
You're not allowed? Well, I always violate rules, man. What can I tell you? But good morning to everybody out there. We're glad to have you here on the Ward Scott Files, hosted by yours truly, John Martin, and the ever omnipresent Mr. Ted Yoho, captain of our pirate ship.
That's
good
right.
morning,
That's
Ted.
right.
Again.
I was out on my little pirate ship this weekend, and it was rough.
Well, we're going to get right into the topics here in just a moment, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the fact, because we're coming to you live from the podcast room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Gridiron Grill, which is a museum to sports in general, but certainly to Coach Spurrier's career, and the food is great here.
Yeah, and the celebration of the Gators, all the wins they've had over the decades.
And we're at Celebration Point, which is right off of Interstate 75.
Perfectly named, right after the basketball win.
Absolutely. And how about them Gators,
Go
baby? Let me
Gators.
take a moment of personal pride and preference. Our alma mater is now going to the big dance and is a #1 seed after winning the best Final Four already, the SEC championship yesterday.
They sure do, and they go on to play, Norfolk in next weekend, I think it is. in the
Absolutely.
evening.
We play next Friday. I guess time will be announced sometime today. But congratulations to our great
Absolutely.
Gators. And
Good guys.
once again, if you're in this neck of the woods, try out Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, because it is fantastic and you will not regret it. All right, let's get right into it, because over the weekend, and we talked about this on our Friday show, the CR, the continuing resolution and all about, getting back to regular order and everything. Well, it passed over the weekend. So in a sense, I guess you could say crisis avoided, but I'm not sure.
Crisis paused.
Crisis paused, and we're going to talk in depth in a little bit about how we may be in a crisis yet to come that we're not really even aware of. But let's talk a little bit about the CR. As we predicted on Friday, it would pass. Basically, it passed because Chuck Schumer caved, if you want to call it that. That's certainly what the Democrats are calling it. Caved in and allowed cloture on the vote. Explain again exactly what cloture is, Ted.
Cloture is where they table any other discussions on a vote. So you have to take the vote the way it is. And it's something both sides use, and they politicize it and say, oh, we shouldn't do this, but they both do it. And it's one of those tools that it was designed, if I remember correctly, to protect the minority so that they can stop a discussion on the bill. And he didn't do that, and that's what's got so many of the Democrats riled up. But there was he mentioned it's a Hobson choice, and that's where you've got two choices, and neither one is good. And so just get it over with, move on to the next thing.
So in a sense, what that means is that he allowed the vote to be taken,
Right,
which
right.
it then passed by pretty much all just Republican support, which means that we it's not like it's the Republican, quote, budget. If I understand it correctly, essentially they're just saying, okay, we're going to carry out to the end of fiscal year 2024, which is in September, and we're just going to go with the budget or that they proposed in the past. It's essentially Biden's budget still, isn't it?
There are a lot of things in there, but what it allows the president to do is go in there and keep doing what he and Elon Musk are doing, with the Doge, is scaling down these agencies. And we can talk more about that. USAID will not come back the way I understand it. Had a phone call today, and there's components of that were good, but there was so much bad and corruption in that they have to rebrand that and bring it back, and it'll be brought back very minimally is what we're seeing. It's funny how the Democrats, when the Republicans do what they did, It's all bad, 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 and they go on. But when they do it, it's good, 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 good. And it's just back and forth. And this is why so much doesn't get solved, because they try to beat each other instead of putting the nation first and focus on what's best for the nation.
Yeah, they definitely didn't do it out of the goodness of their heart, right? Chuck Schumer just looking out for you. I want to play a short video here, and it's part of a much longer one and I would encourage people to watch it, where Chuck talks about the reasons why he's going to basically allow cloture to happen. And this, I think, really kind of sums up what the Democrats are all about. Let's listen to it, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Extremely troubling, I believe. A shutdown could stall federal court cases, one of the best redoubts against Trump's lawlessness. It could require to furlough critical staff at the courts, denying victims and defendants alike their day in court, dragging out appeals, and clogging the justice system for months or even years. This administration has shown an unfathomable willingness to sacrifice American families and their well-being to advance
Ted, as I was
their own
saying before we went to that video break, that there's a long list of things that Schumer said as to why he was going for cloture. But I thought that one point, I didn't want it to escape people, to keep the court systems open to stop Donald Trump and the DOGE project that Elon Musk is heading, is one of the reasons why they wanted to keep the government open.
Right. They want it as a block to what Trump and Elon are doing, or the Republicans are doing. And it's something that needed to happen. We've talked about this. You either deal with these things, these challenges we're facing, especially on our debt, proactively, or you wait till it's a crisis. And I tell you, it will really be ugly. And, I'm happy they're doing this. Could it be done better? Absolutely, probably, when you look back on it. But it's something that needed to be done, and I applaud them.
Yeah, so keeping the court systems open, as I say, not for the American people, but to prevent because he says literally in that they're using the court system as the only means to stop the MAGA or Donald Trump agenda and to stop DOGE, which is Department of Government Efficiency. So it's just bizarre how they're doing it. And we also saw over the weekend how they tried to use the courts to stop the deportation of some of the roughest gang members on the planet. This one out of Venezuela,
right,
where we sent them down to prison in El Salvador, I believe it is, right?
Tren de Aragua.
Tren de Agua.
That word, yeah.
Something like that. That word. We don't have a lot of train day in Hawthorne, thank God. But the judge tried to stop them. And think about this, Ted. Can you imagine trying to be on the side that wants to keep criminals like that gang in here that literally bum rush people's apartments out in Colorado, that literally have tortured people that we know of to death in some cases, but you're going to advocate for keeping them in our country? Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. And, they're using the court system any way they can to do that. And you're going to see this for the next 2 years until the midterms. Their hopes is to gain the House back and possibly the Senate, which I don't think there's any way they can get the Senate back. The House, more than likely not, just because you're seeing the Democrats still talking about the same things that they did before the election that they lost so bad. In fact, I know you've got it coming up. The favorability of the Democrats right now is at an all-time low. I think it's historical low following the Biden administration. But you were talking about Schumer and how he's saying that the Republicans are doing this on their own and they're not being bipartisan. I want to remind everybody about Schumer and the Obama administration had the shutdown in 2016 or 17, and they had the Senate, the White House, but he was singing a different song because they went in on 2011, they did Obamacare with no input from Republicans. And he's saying, they're not taking any input from the Democrats here. And, it's tit for tat, unfortunately, but if we keep going down this road, it's not going to be good for the country, and I know you'll bring that up later. They have to start putting what's best for this country, where both parties can work bipartisanly to solve those issues. We got some big issues, our debt, immigration, China, the meltdown of the world order that we're seeing unfold right in front of us.
Well, you mentioned, and rightfully so, that there's blame to spread around on both sides. Each side kind of goes a tit for tat, and that brings me to something I used to say all the time: that what we need to take our country back, but we don't need to take it back from the Democrats or back from the Republicans. We need to take it back from our own ignorance and apathy. Is what
That's
I
a good
say.
point.
That our own ignorance of just how special this country we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can or won't do anything and everything to save her. That's what I used to say, because it's really up to us, the American citizens, to monitor this, to be active. I always tell people we need to become happy warriors, warriors.
We do. And if you look at pre-World War II Germany, the Weimar Republic, the population became complacent. And that allowed for Hitler to come in, and the demise of the world order. And it's we're right on the edge of that. And you brought up a good point. We should be thankful for where we're at. Compared to any place else in the world, it's not perfect because you and I are, and me, I'm in it. I don't know about you. You're a pretty good guy, but when you have humans in it, it's not going to be a perfect area. But it was a perfect design by the Constitution and our framers of that, and. You look around the world, it's not the norm of what we have in this country. And a big part of that to maintain this is education, people understanding what form of government they have, and then the responsible call to citizens to do what's right by the country.
Well, that's why I always say we need to educate people. We need to motivate people, and we need to activate people.
You did well on that.
And I really believe that, as far as I'm concerned, that's the essence of what we're trying to do on this show, really.
It really is, and I appreciate people listening in and comments that come in. And, it's you that we're really doing this for. We want to get this word out. We want people to be engaged in what we're doing and for the country's sake.
Well, that's kind of what our mentor, Ward Scott, that we named this show, we're doing in honor of Wells Ward. He was a great educator, a motivator, and an activator in his own right. And oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make a formal announcement there. We're now going, with your support, we're going to an hour-long broadcast. We're still doing it just Mondays and Fridays at 9 o'clock live. But we're going to a full hour starting today. We appreciate your growing support.
We sure do.
And if you'd like to be a sponsor of our show, you can contact Freddie. You'll see the moniker on the tagline of the show there, and become a sponsor of our show. And we're going to give you, our listeners, more and more opportunity to interact with us as time goes on.
What do you think if we take the name, the Ward Scott Files, in honor of Ward, and as a legacy, maybe go to the WSF Presents?
Absolutely. That would probably be a good name for a website, I think.
I think so. And it will be Ward Scott Files, but we'll shorten it to WSF. And his legacy will live on.
It's better than the Democrats moniker, which is WTF, I think, right now. Because that's what they keep doing. Like, what the heck is going on here?
Something like that, right? You can't say those words.
You can't, Ted, and I won't either. But what can I tell you? I'm a bad boy sometimes. But you mentioned this polling, so I want to get into that for just a second here, because it's very, very interesting.
It is.
And this is a CNN poll. Now keep that on CNN poll.
Consider the source.
Yeah, it's not Fox News. It's not, it's CNN. Democrats' favorability rating stands at a record low of 29%.
Record low.
Record low per history of the outlet surveys, talking about CNN. A majority of Democrats and Democrat-aligned independents, 57%, according to this poll, say the party should focus on blocking Republicans' agenda. Not in getting anything done, but blocking the agenda instead of reaching across the aisle to achieve policy wins. And this is really a minority. 42% sided with the bipartisan route. So their unfavorability is way down, but the 42%, almost a majority of Democrats, do not want to do a bipartisan route.
They don't.
They don't.
And that's the scary thing. And that goes up to, Schumer says, well, this wasn't bipartisan and we should work together and work across the aisle. But yet you go back to when they had the House and the Senate and the White House, they didn't care. They rammed through Obamacare. And the more they're like that, the more divided this nation will get. And I'm not just saying the Democrats, the more the Republicans are like this, there needs to be new leadership that comes together and bridges these gaps. And, until then, we're going to see this division grow, and these numbers will get worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was listening on the way into a broadcast, and it was saying that only 7% of Democrats, 7% thought that the Democratic Party was doing extremely well. Only 7%. I wonder who the heck those 7% are.
That's pretty scary. If I was running the DCCC, I think I would have some messaging folks come in, some coaches, and change their message, but you can't change their underlying beliefs. They believe this way, and that's why they're not in power.
Absolutely. So, and you and I probably don't see this totally eye to eye, but, we're probably on the same page on a certain extent. I am, as a longtime Democrat, I've been a Republican now officially for over
you came out of
over a decade. But I come from a long line of old yellow dog Democrats. And so I tell people all the time, I'm not being critical of every person that's a registered Democrat. In fact, I can't find any reason to support any Democrat officials right now. But if we're going to have a two-party system, what I tell people all the time, Ted, is they need to take that party back over, because regardless of how they feel about being a, quote, Democrat, their leadership is just bat crazy, to me. And they need to take that party. If you're going to stay in the Democratic Party, take your party back from the cliff that it's on right now.
That's right. Do you got a moment for a quick story, funny story about the Blue Dog Democrats?
Absolutely.
So I'm running, and I had a Democrat running against me. He was from Haiti, and we're doing a television interview over in Jacksonville. And we're sitting at a table like this, the host and me and my opponent. And my opponent, the guy asked him, he says, "Why should people vote for you?" And he goes, "Well, I guess I'm one of what you call those old blue dog Democrats." And I started laughing. I'm a veterinarian, right? And so when you see a dog come in with blue gums, it tells you, and they're looking at me like, "What in the heck are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm a veterinarian." And I said, when I see a dog come in with blue gums, I said, it means they're lacking oxygen. So we give them enough oxygen to where their gums turn red, and they become a Republican.
Get their brain actually working, right?
Oxygen to the brain. They ended the interview there, and they're both laughing. It was great.
Well, we were talking about how this continuing resolution has kind of put a strain, if you will, on which direction the Democratic Party should go to. So I want to play a brief snippet. This is Hakeem Jeffries, who, God help us, if the Democrats were to take back the House, he would be the Speaker of the House. But he's considered one of the leaders, and he was asked point blank in a press conference about Chuck Schumer, and his response was pretty telling. Let's check it out.
Senate.
Next question.
Mr. Leader,
Thanks.
Mr. Leader, first, can you clarify, are you encouraging your Senate colleagues to vote no on cloture, not just the bill itself?
We've been very clear. We strongly oppose the reckless Republican spending bill. Period. Full stop. Our position, repeatedly articulated this week, speaks for itself.
Leader, is it time for new leadership in the Senate?
Next question.
Mr. Leader,
Thanks.
So he's asked about basically Chuck Schumer, because he's asked a direct question about, do you still support the leadership of the Democrats in the Senate? And what was his response?
Next question, please.
Next question.
That sums it all up, doesn't it?
Yeah, and he was asked again a kind of a follow-up on the same thing later, and he essentially said the same thing. So he doesn't even want to talk about Chuck Schumer. So that just tells you how far apart they are. And of
How
course,
divisive they are in their own party.
yeah, and your dear friend and colleague Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez,
My former colleague from New York.
she's pretty upset about it too, and they're putting pressure on her to primary old Chuck Schumer in New York. That would be a very interesting race, would it not?
That would be, and let's hope she wins, because that'll keep the Democrat Party from advancing those liberal progressive ideas. And the thing she's upset about is that he supported the CR. Now, what was your option? Your option is to shut the government down. I voted for that back when I first went in, when our debt was $13.5 trillion. Now we're at $34 trillion and growing. If you shut the government down, what happens is every contract that's been submitted to the government, military, education, USDA, any branch that has a contract, whether it's a fax machine or a computer program, when it reopens, they have to resubmit those contracts all over again throughout all of government. And it is a mess, but it has to be what's going on right now with the Trump administration is what has to happen. It's a proactive stance to curb our spending. And we're not going to be able to cut enough to get out of this. So you've got to curb the spending and do the cuts, but you have to grow an economy too.
Absolutely. Well, we've been talking about the continuing resolution that passed, and in essence, a crisis avoided, I suppose. But we're going to take a commercial break and come back, and we're going to talk about in depth about have we really avoided a crisis, or are we just really getting started? So we'll take a commercial break. We'll be right back. Please look at the sponsors we have on there. Support them. And if you'd like to be a sponsor, look at that little blue tag up there. Advertise with us. Contact Freddie and make it happen. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
I'd like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators. The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company, Shoot GTR, On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Ward, that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth.
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's gonna come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
And we're back, Ted. We're back. And we appreciate everybody tuning in, listening. We're going to a full hour starting today. Please support our sponsors. As I said,
absolutely.
If you'd like to be a sponsor, look at that tagline, contact Freddie, and we'll make it happen. But when we went to commercial break, we were talking about crisis avoided with the continuing resolution, the budget that essentially was passed to keep us in business until the next fiscal year. But you brought up to me over the weekend and pointed out this article, this billionaire guy who was the head of the largest hedge fund investor, a guy named Ray Dalio. Is that how you?
That's good. You
is
did good.
Dalio. And Tucker Carlson, he interviewed him, which I can say Tucker Carlson a lot better than Ray Dalio. But about this idea that we're on the verge of a civil war in the United States. And in fact, Mr. Dalio makes a case, and we'll break it down in a minute, that we're already in one. So if that is true, and even close to being true, then I don't know about crisis avoided. Maybe the crisis is just getting started.
A lot of people feel that way, and there's been articles written about if you take all of the counties in America, I think there's roughly 3,700 counties, the majority of them are red districts, but the population is in the smaller blue counties, and they're in the areas like Queens and Los Angeles and things like that, and they are 180 degrees apart. The story of or article of Ray Dalio's, it ties right into what Schumer and your poll stats were saying. The Dems want to beat the Republicans, not reach across the aisle to solve the problems. And a lot of times the Republicans are the same way, although I feel they are fighting for what's right for America, and it's fueling the division. The solution is there has to be a unifying leader and a message that respects the difference of the other side, but we've got to come together to solve our debt problem. What's going on with China controlling everything they do. And we could do a couple segments on China. From human trafficking to organ harvesting on demand are some of the most egregious things that I can't believe we even buy anything from them. And if we fail and a civil war happens or is perceived, that's the other thing. If it's just perceived to be happening, the world comes apart as we know it, and a new world order will be fought for and will develop.
Well, you reminded me of something when I was listening to you then about how when I switched over to become a Republican, people asked me, the reporters...
Have to check your gums too, they're red.
See, they turn in red. They asked me why, and I told them then, and I think it's as true today as ever, that, I'm not saying the Republicans are all that in a bag of chips, but at least there are some in the Republican Party that are asking questions. At that time, asking and questioning things. In the Democratic Party, there was no one asking questions. They were just lockstep. You talk about Hitler and all, they're goose-stepping along with it. And at least there are some that are asking questions.
Well, you look at the Republican Party traditionally, they stand for God, country, family, and the traditions, Thanksgiving, all the things that have been a standard for this country for centuries. And you look at the modern Democrats, especially with the advent or the coming on the stage of Obama, the fundamental transformation of America that I like to call the Obamanization of America, where we're getting away from the true values of this country, and they were changing. And it was a rapid change that they were doing, and they almost succeeded. Had Biden and Harris won, or Harris won this election, this country would have been doomed, and you would have seen a big change in this country. And I'm just thankful that the people put in Trump. He's got a lot of flaws, as we all do, but what he's doing is really what needs to be done. It's messy right now, but I think you're going to see things starting to ease and, getting inflation under control, gas prices coming down, things like that, and the market stabilized.
Well, let's get into as they say in the country, the meat and potatoes of this article. We're gonna be reading an article by a lady named Jeannie Mancini, who is a Benzinga staff writer. This comes from Benzinga, and it is about an interview that Tucker Carlson did with this gentleman, Ray Dalio.
Very good.
Excuse me, I'm a little congested here. Billionaire investor Ray Dalio doesn't do baseless fear-mongering. When he speaks, people listen, I guess like E.F. Hutton, or like Ted Yoho when he speaks on it. Because he spent decades successfully predicting, this is according to the article, economic shifts, financial crisis, and global power shifts, he is saying that the United States, essentially, Ted, is at a turning point, and it may be too late, that we're on the verge of a real civil war that could get violent. So this is what he said during an appearance on the Tucker Carlson show last month. We are probably past, talking about the United States, past the point of being able to resolve that by compromise and empathy and all of that. If this is true, that is very scary. What's your thoughts on that, Ted?
No, I think it is. If we continue down this path, you get further and further apart. People pick sides, and they become more isolated in their thoughts and their ability to even want to work across the aisle. And that's where I say you need a new leadership and a new vision. You know, I keep looking back at John Kennedy when he brought this nation together over the space program, which we had a remarkable thing with SpaceX going up there and working to retrieve the astronauts. But he brought this nation together in the 60s, said we're going to put a man on the moon and return him safely before the end of the decade. And we did that. We didn't have the technology we have today. We had slide rulers, compasses, and protractors. But we came together as Americans and made that happen. And we can do that again, but we need that person that's not going to be divisive. And, you know, Trump is in there. He's doing what really needs to be done to this country. And probably 50 to 100 years from now, they'll look back and say he did what needed to be done. He was a true leader. And, you know, they'll define who he is down the road. But right now, it's something we need to work with and applaud the success they're having. And let's get them back on track so that these laid off employees, the programs that were shuttered that maybe shouldn't have, like some in the VA, some in the assistance, international assistance, they did good work in some of those. Bring those back in a very well thought out manner, and if they do, they'll win the midterms. But that's when they need to work together to coalesce Republicans and Democrats together on a common cause.
Well, you mentioned SpaceX there, and boy, what a great thing. And I had my kids out watching my grandkids, I should say, chemtrails, if you will, of the space launch the other day, and they got a big kick out of that. But to me, it kind of brings up an example of what Mr. Dalio is talking about this, because there are literally, and I know on MSNBC they had a so-called Republican, that Steele guy that used to be the chairman of the party.
Michael Steele, yeah.
Michael Steele, I mean, good Lord. But when they had a test firing of a rocket a week or so ago that blew up, he literally laughed about it and applauded it. And there got to be people, Ted, out there right now, and God help us, I wish I was wrong on this, but there got to be people that are wishing that this mission to bring these astronauts back would fail somehow.
Sure.
I want to just say this for the record. If you're someone who is wishing for that mission to be unsuccessful, which would probably mean death to some people, you need to check yourself.
And I think would be safe to say they're probably not watching you and I.
That's probably true. But if it's your neighbor,
right,
tell
though.
them they need to check. Because I can't
really
even fathom. It's hard for me to fathom someone rooting against something like this rescue mission.
Cheering
but you
on
know
failure.
Do you know there are people who are doing that?
Oh, yeah, they are.
And hoping for that. It's absolutely crazy.
Well, you look in Gainesville, just the boycott and boycott, I guess it was, in demonstration against Tesla. Here's a guy that's the richest person in the world, working for free up there, doing what the Trump administration had a mandate to do, was reform government, and government needed to be reformed. Plus, what he's doing with NASA and retrieving astronauts and putting the Starlink communications out there. And they want to boycott him because they don't like what he's doing, and what he's helping do is making America stronger, and they're boycotting him because of that.
Yeah, we should just be grateful that he's here.
I might even go out and buy a Tesla.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm not. See, the thing about it, I hadn't really talked about this. I'm not opposed to the whole electric vehicle deal by any stretch or any means. I'm just opposed me having to pay for that. In other words, tax subsidies, wear and tear on roads and all that kind of stuff. If you want to buy an electric vehicle, I applaud you 100%. I might even buy one in the future. Not right now, but just because it's a personal decision. But I just don't understand how these people can be so pro EV and now so anti-Tesla. It's just crazy. But
well, that whole argument about EVs and mandating that, all one has to do is travel the interstate on a holiday in Florida or spring break, and look at how many vehicles are on the road. There are probably 98% of them are petroleum driven, whether it's gas or diesel. And to try to mandate everybody goes to an electric vehicle car, it's something that would never happen. And you couldn't do it right now. We don't have the infrastructure, let alone the damage it does to the environment. Mining those critical minerals in the poor countries that don't have the standards, or they're done by a country like China that don't have the standards that we mine by, Not that we always do it right, but I think we do it probably as good, if not better, than anybody else in the world. And so it's just a fantasy that they had to do this. But I agree with you. If you want an EV, drive it. But I can tell you, when I go down to our house in the Keys and pull a boat, an EV is not going to help. Is not going to make it happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about this article where it's Ray, is that right?
Ray Dalio.
Ray Dalio was being interviewed by Tucker Carlson, and he's basically giving a foreboding message that we're on the verge, if not already, in a civil war in the United States. And the worst part is he's basically saying it may be too late to turn back. But let's get back into it.
Well, wait a minute.
Go ahead.
I know we just went through an election, but yet it's how people respond in elections that'll keep us out of that civil war. Elect people that are going to stand up and do what's best for the country. Elect people that will work across the aisle on the issues that we can agree on, and throw the other ones out. You know, you see a lot of people up there, their whole goal is to get a viral moment on YouTube or whatever a media platform they're using, and they're not really up there to solve the problems. They're up there for their own self-edification and their own benefit.
Well, 74 million people, I think, voted for Donald Trump a couple of times now.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, that's not a cult, by the way. So 74 million people is not a cult. It is a movement and a potential of a revolution. But I don't know if you saw this or not, but, we've been called everything but a child of God for supporting Donald Trump, people who have. But the latest thing was that Schumer came out and called them all bastards. I know you don't use that kind of language, but Chuck Schumer literally he rarely called all of us that voted for Donald Trump bastards.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Well, go back to Hillary Clinton. We're all deplorables, the gun-toting and Bible-thumping deplorables. Again, they're divisive. We want to make America stronger, great again, and they can help. They can participate.
Well, I'm proud to be the garbage guy at my house. I take the garbage. That's one of my main duties, clean the pool and take out the trash. But Mr. Dalio said on this interview, he said in the nation, talking about the United States, internal divisions are now so severe that traditional resolutions like bipartisanship, which we just talked about, 42% of Democrats polled said they don't want any bipartisanship, and civil discourse are no longer viable. His words, according to this article, Mr. Dalio's words, paint a bleak picture of a country that may be on an irreversible path toward deeper turmoil. A civil war of values and wealth. That, to me, is kind of an interesting statement.
It really is. And you look at the protests that have happened, after George Floyd, the Antifa mobs that were out there, the Black Lives Matter. You look at the protest up at Trump Towers. Those are, it's been shown that those were paid political protesters. Now, there's some that are very adamant and rabid about their beliefs, and they were in there. But a lot of those people, especially if you go back to that one up at the Trump Towers in New York, you could tell those people they were having a good time. They weren't really angry protesters like you used to get in the 60s and things like that.
Yeah, well, I saw one lady, I believe it was on Fox News, said that one of the pundits said when she was in college, she didn't have time to do all that kind of stuff. So,
if you're in college to get an education, you don't.
Yeah, and if you're paying for it, of course, I guess we're paying for it, it looks like now.
Yeah.
But Carlson pressed Dalio to elaborate on his claim that the U.S. is in a civil war, noting that most Americans don't perceive it that way. Dalio clarified that while he said, while it's not a traditional civil war, it's a type of civil war driven by, and I like this, by irreconcilable differences. And it does seem that way, that sometimes our differences are irreconcilable.
They got difference in fundamental beliefs. One group that lost the election, they believe that America should be a socialized country. We're heading into communism, and the other side believes in a constitutional republic that we've been founded on. That's it really is a shining light on the hill for the rest of the world, freedom. How many people migrate to other countries? How many people cross the oceans to get to a country of their choice where they have opportunity, the rule of law, and we were losing that, and we were on the verge of losing all of that, and then that beacon of hope would be gone for the world, and that's where you're going to get a shifting in world powers and world orders, And I don't think if one of the other countries, Russia, it wouldn't be Russia, it'd be China, and or a coalition of them with Iran, Russia, and throw in North Korea and Cuba, Venezuela. Do you really want them running the world, or do you want the liberal democracies of Western ideologies that have created the most massive amount of liberty and freedom the world has ever seen? I mean, that's undisputable. You've got two choices.
Well, that's why I always call this United States of America is an experiment.
It is.
And people they think about, oh, we've been around forever and a day. No, we haven't. When you start talking about world history, and this is why we need to teach history so people understand this light of freedom is a flicker that could easily be blown out. And it's not the history of the world to have freedom like we have here. In fact, we are the exception, not the rule of human history.
We are. And, you know, when you look at empires, you know, people call us an empire. And, you know, we're at the top of the food chain right now as far as superpowers. But when you look at, you know, Great Britain, you look at the Roman Empire, the Byzantines, the Ottoman Empire, those empires lasted, or the Genghis Khan, they lasted for hundreds and hundreds of years. We're only at a little over 40-some years. And you brought up liberty and freedom, how short-lived that is. You've heard me refer to that book, The Miracle of Freedom, the 7 tipping points that saved the world. On the planet, the anthropologists and the people that study all that stuff said there's been, at their best estimate, 100 billion people that have lived on this planet. Out of that, only 4.5%, which would be 4.5 billion people, have ever experienced the liberty and freedom that we see today. The amazing thing is 80% of us are alive today. That's how short-lived that is, and that's how rare it is in human history. This is worth fighting for, and this is why we've got to get this right and bring this nation together to keep that belief out there and that opportunity out there. Anybody can have their country's dream like we have the American dream, but you can't do it without opportunity and without rule of law and the respect for those things.
Yeah, when you said that about liberty and freedom, it reminded me, you know, all politics is somewhat local, as they say, and we're going to do a few local stories down the way here in the coming days. But I was speaking to a county commission meeting. This has been about a decade ago now, and this one county commissioner, I'll let him be anonymous. His name is Mike Byerly. But I was saying something about liberty and freedom under public comments, and he literally said under his comments that Mr. Martin brought up antiquated words like liberty and freedom that are no longer used today. That's what he said in his defense of or opposing what I had to say.
That's sad. That's really sad to be an elected official. Of course, it's out of Alachua County. He also went on to say he was a proud socialist. So, you know, and what does a socialist want to do? They want to control. They want to control the people. They want to control what you do. And all you have to do is talk to somebody from Cuba, talk to somebody from Venezuela. Venezuela has implemented the fatherland card with the Chinese technology that gives good citizen scores, and that those scores dictate what you can do as far as your liberties and freedoms in the eyes of the Communist Party or the eyes of the Maduro regime.
Well, you mentioned Cuba. I don't know if you saw this, but Cuba over the past week has had complete island-wide blackouts in the last week or so. Probably the only part lit up is the part where we're housing some prisoners at Guantanamo Bay.
Continually, yeah, I can guarantee you that. But they have on average of 6 blackouts a day. And if you're in the manufacturing or in the business world, you're trying to create a product, you can't do that with blackouts or brownouts. You just can't do that. So you can't develop an economy. You can't grow the jobs that you needed to keep people employed, to increase their livelihoods, to have that liberty and freedom. And really, those kind of regimes, they don't care about the people, because the people are there to serve the power of the elites and their government model. Unlike ours, our system was set up by we the people for the people, and government was here to serve the people, not us serve the government.
Well, back to this story about potential of a civil war in the United States, and you mentioned, we were talking about blackouts just now, and we've seen how fragile we can be if the lights go out. I mean, we could have a civil war based on that.
Well, go back to the last hurricane that we had. I got phone calls from people that were at the gas station trying to get gas. There was a limited amount of gas. people were getting in fights over the gas at the gas stations. And that was a hurricane that, within probably a week to 2 weeks, for the most part, the infrastructure was up and running, the banking, the grocery stores were restocked. But that's how quickly things deteriorate when it gets really bad like that. And people don't think that can happen here. I'd advise read the book A Second After. I think it was by Ted Koppel. If we were to have something happen to our electrical grid, whether it's an EMP, an attack by another country, and they explain what happens. And I think in that book, if I remember correctly, they predicted that 80 to 90% of Americans would be dead within 6 months to a year.
Wow. Scary.
Yeah.
It
330 million people. And interestingly, on the same line, MIT has done studies since the 70s about population, and they predict that by 2050, the population in America will be what it was in 1900s, and that's what our economic output will be.
Wow. Scary thought.
It's scary.
So we're talking about this idea that we may already be in a civil war and it may be too late. And this is what Mr. Ray Dalio said about this. He said division, in his view, isn't just about politics. It's a combination of economic disparity, clashing values, and growing distrust in institutions. And clashing values, I want to play a video here. This is Tom Homan over the weekend in New York.
It's a good video.
And it's I'd encourage people, as I tell them, look at the whole video. We're just going to play a brief snippet of, but this is Tom Homan, our border czar, talking about saving lives. Check it out.
Because we're saving lives. And I work for a president who wants to save lives. I work for a president committed to make this country safe again. And that's exactly what we're doing. You want to hate on me? Hate on me. I eat it up. Let me be clear. Zero tolerance is about saving lives. If we figure we start prosecuting people who violate the law and put the children in harm's way, maybe they stop coming. And they did. Numbers went down. It's unfortunate families got separated. But it happens to American families every day. It's going to happen in Albany today that American family will be separated by law enforcement because the child can't go to jail with a parent. But we want to talk about family separation? 500,000 children on Joe Biden were trafficked into this country. They can't find 300,000 of them. That's a separation. But you know what President Trump's committed? We're going to find them, and we're going to save them, because many of these children are in forced labor, many of these children are in forced sex slavery. We're going to save them. I love my job, because we're saving lives. And I work for a president who wants to save lives. I work for a president committed to make this country
Ted,
safer.
there's Tom Homan, and my point being in playing that is, talk about clashing values, and maybe we are too far gone, because if you might not like, and I'm not saying you, Ted, but you might not like the way Tom Homan presents himself. He may be too rough around the edges for some people, but the essence of what he's saying about protecting American citizens, if you're opposed to that, I don't know that we have anything to discuss.
I don't either. And no, I like Tom Homan. I think, he's gruff. He's rough around the edges. I've been known to be like that. You don't like to see him at a WWF fight and being on the top turnbuckles, coming down, giving a Dusty Rhodes on somebody's head. But, he's the guy that needs to be there right now. He is a no BS person, and he's carrying out a mission to make this country safer. Look at how much results they've had in that short period of time. Immigration, illegal immigration passage into this country is down over 96%. And that is something that had to happen. That was something done intentionally by the Biden administration and the elites that were controlling that administration. And that all signals go back to the Obama machine that was really running that. And, that'll come out in history. It'll be a great movie someday.
Hopefully we'll get to see it if we're not in end of the world times. But Mr. Dalio he makes three kind of key points.
Three great points.
The first one is, he says the wealth gap is exploding, reasons for a civil war. The rich are getting richer, and I love this point here. While 60% of Americans struggle with below 6th grade reading level. That is just, if you can't read, you can't learn.
Let me stop you right there.
Go ahead.
What is the results of that 5 to 10 years down the road? What will America be with that kind of a educated or uneducated workforce? Where does that lead this country to? That should be something everybody should be concerned. I don't care what your political affiliation is. That's something that needs to be addressed in this country to make this country strong, because 10 years from now, we will be collapsed. You got people right now that can't make change at a register. They can't read a tape measure. They can't do simple math. And you want them on a construction job? It's just not going to work. You're not going to maintain the lifestyle that we've developed in this over 200 some years of trials and tribulations. And again, it's not a perfect country, but it's the best on the planet. I've been around the world, and I don't want to be anyplace else.
Well, when it comes to about education, it's hard to even talk about these issues because he talks about the political polarization in his next point. We've already kind of discussed that. But if you can't start with admitting that no matter whether President Trump is right or the Democrats are right, if you can't start with a point that our current education system is failing, period. End of story. It's failing. So we got to have some new idea. And the trend is even worse, going, to total failure. So, when you look at like in Baltimore, Maryland, where no single student in the school district can read at grade level, not 1%, not one person, then we got to start with
simple math.
Yeah, how can you argue against at least making some changes when it's not working? Well, we talked a little bit about the political clash and how they're not getting together. So let's move on to his third point, which I think is one of the more interesting ones. He says people no longer trust the system. Does the legal system stand in the way of that fight, or is there going to be a fight that will make the cause more important than anything else? So saying a basic distrust of the system. And my thought on that, Ted, and then we'll let you expand on it. I was thinking about something that Rand Paul, I know you're a fan of Rand, said the other day. He said that we tend to forget, and I'm paraphrasing here, that our country was founded on a basic distrust of institutions, and that the founding fathers essentially distrusted institutions and wanted us to distrust them and question them on a regular basis, basically. And I think he's right about that.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. There's that book I've referenced a lot by Noah Feldman. It's about James Madison, and it's called Genius, Patriot, and President. And he talks about all those arguments, exactly what that was. This nation was set up because of that mistrust. That's why they had the separation of powers. That's why they had the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, because they didn't want any of that controlled by a government. But yet we're starting to see that in this. It's a slow creep, and it's like the frog being cooked. You can throw him in boiling water or turn up the heat slowly. Doesn't matter to the frog because either way he gets cooked. And this is where shows like this, where we point these things out, people will start looking at this, and our hopes is that they start researching and are like, hey, heck yeah, look what's going on. We do need to change. We do need to elect leaders and hold those leaders accountable. And I had the privilege to serve for 8 years, and we heard from a lot of people that held me accountable. And it was a great honor to be able to do that.
Well, Mr. Dalio's conclusion in this article says the U.S. is no longer functioning as a unified nation, and he's probably absolutely right about that. He said Dalio,
no doubt.
Yeah, the writer of the article says Dalio doesn't believe this division will magically heal itself. Instead, he predicts that the U.S. will break apart even further. He says this, Ted. He says, I think we're going to more fragmentation. And he says that the states, and this is, I think, a point where I find very interesting about the states, increasingly isolated from one another, operating under vastly different rules and priorities. He's right that we're seeing that, but here's where I might differ with him. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
I don't think so either. And remember, it's an experiment of the states. And we were joined together on a common cause that formed this country, and that was to get away from a tyrannical government of the king from Great Britain. And that's what united this nation, those things that bound us together. But we're seeing that division today. I mean, those 3 points now, the wealth gap, the educational gap, and then the ideology gaps, as they grow, we become more divided.
Well, I've always thought that the idea of and I used to say a Gulf Council, if you will, not talking about fishing, but like Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, that kind of thing, we ought to kind of bond together. And I'm not talking about a civil war, but see, I don't think that there's anything wrong with having different tax policies and certain policies in a place like New York or Boston and Massachusetts and different. I don't expect New York and Texas to be the same.
No, absolutely
and,
not.
And people have the freedom to move with their feet or whatever. If California, if you want, think about this. We're talking about St. Patrick's Day earlier, and our gift to Ireland is Rosie O'Donnell. But these people who are talking about leaving,
that was
they're
me,
not,
John. That was me.
They're not just talking about leaving the United States. They're leaving California.
They are.
So, hey, if you want to be in the Republic of California, so be it. But if you want to come to Texas, and I don't speak for them, but I'll speak for Florida, just don't bring whatever you left with you. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having states functioning differently as long as we come together for the common defense.
My last term in Congress, I was getting, angry. And there was this lady, she got on with her family, and she goes, "Oh, you're a congressman?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Where are you from?" I said, "Florida." I said, "Where are you from?" She goes, "I'm from California." And I said, "That's great." I says, "Do me a favor, leave your politics in California." And I didn't smile. It was a bad thing for me to do, but it was just at that point in my career where I was getting ready to leave, and I was fed up with the nonsense. And people want to come to a nut like Texas or Florida, one of the free states. And they want to change it. It's kind of like people immigrating to America and want to change it to like the country they came from. And it's not going to work. It's not going to happen here.
Well, absolutely. Well, we're about out of time. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Please like and share what we're doing. If you have comments, please make them. You can see us live every Monday and Friday on Facebook, on the Ward Scott Files, and some others soon to come. You can also check out our videos on YouTube. It's the Ward Scott Files.
The WSF presents.
Absolutely.
Sounds like World Wrestling Federation again, doesn't it? The Ward Scott Files lives on.
Yeah.
Through John and Ted.
Yeah, with the bionic elbow.
That's right.
But as I say, thanks for tuning in. Please like and share what we're doing. Please support our sponsors. And once again, if you'd like to be one, look at that little moniker, Contact Freddie. We'd love to have you come on board. And we're now doing an hour each week, Monday and Friday. Well, Ted, anything to wrap us up there?
No, just follow the Gators. They're on a great track for March Madness, and they'll bring home another title, let's hope. Huh? Let's hope and pray. And then get involved in your government. Get involved holding your members of government, state, local, and federal accountable, and put pressure on them. And what you'll find out is their hearing becomes a lot more acute the closer the election is.
Yep. Educate, motivate, activate, baby.
Good job.
Peace.
Later.